Well, hello, everybody. This is Peter Hernandez, and I'm your host for The Core Truth. And today I have Douglas Elliman Sales Executive Sales Manager, Concho Minick, with me on the call. And we're going to talk about, what it takes to run a great office and how to be a great manager. Concho, thank you so much for being on this call with me today. I really, really appreciate it. It's really, really a privilege to have you on. For those of you that don't know Concho, I'm going to let him talk a little bit about his background. But just as a brief introduction, he's owned his own company. He sold it to a major firm, and now he's managing our Douglas Elliman Dallas office, kind of one of our flagship offices in Texas. So, Concho, welcome to the
Thank
podcast.
you.
It's so great to have you on The Core Truth.
Thanks, Peter. I think it's a real honor for me to do this and spend the time with you. Maybe I'll start with a little background. And I really, before getting into real estate, most of people know me as a finance guy. I spent years and years doing mergers and acquisitions. I was a CFO. Really made my living doing financial modeling, raising capital, doing transactions. And it was such a great experience for me. It was really more broad than you would think. And it led me to these opportunities to run companies. And so I made the leap from being a finance guy to get my first opportunity to run a big enterprise, which I did, which was in entertainment, believe it or not. I learned in that company how important culture is, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that. And then coming out of that company, I was an investor in a brokerage. I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to run that brokerage for a few years, and we built it and sold it. So originally a finance guy, then an operator again, and here I am, I guess,
Right.
an operator again.
Well, it's so interesting because when we interviewed, originally for the position, I was so impressed by your background, and I knew that all of those experiences would help you very, very much in the branch management world. But we also talked about, some of the newness that was going to be for you, that actually, working with these high-powered agents and helping them, develop their careers and grow their businesses was going to be a new challenge for you. And I think that it was for me. I know, when I went from sales, because I had a little different background than you, into the management, I realized right away that it required just a completely different toolkit of skill sets. And I want to ask you just right off the bat, now that you've been doing this for a while, what do you think the skill sets of a good manager include? Like, if you were to describe what skills a manager needs, what would be some of the skills?
I would say, Peter, that they're universal to some extent. I don't know that is unique to brokerage. The first thing that comes to mind is just this sense that there's something that I want to give back, right? That I have this need or this drive to help grow people, and to benefit people, and something to share. And that doesn't necessarily have to emerge out of real estate, right? There's business experience there and personal experience and really anything, just like any other business. So it starts with really just wanting to, help make other people's lives better. That's where it starts for me. And then I would say that, it may sound simplistic, but just from where I sit is layering on a commitment to do that consistently again and again, and just come to the table, calmly, and patiently help explore people's skills, find their strengths. And I think that it takes time. I mean, you got to have patience there. And when they see you coming back again and again with that kind of commitment, it'll build trust. And then when you build trust, you can build a team. And I think it just goes from there. And, I think that if managers can find sort of a calm awareness in this and keep doing it, it's really just an example of what we're asking agents to do too. It's really not very much different than what we would like to see in them, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that because, I think we would all agree that our top agents make way more than we do. And so
Good.
it's not for the money. And you
No,
mentioned it's for, kind of being a service and being supportive and helpful. And you also mentioned, that you have to be there for them and you have to do it day in and day out. And that means to me, like, you're not in the spotlight, your agents are in the spotlight, right?
that's
You're
fine.
the one that's in the background, kind of being their support and their guides and maybe their mentors and all these different roles that we play as managers to help them perform at their highest levels. I mean,
That's fine with me. I don't need to be in the spotlight.
so when you think about a great real estate office like the one you've developed in Dallas, what do you think are the makings of a great real estate office?
Oh, gosh, there's a lot. I mean, I think that in brokerage, it's not the highest margin business, right? So that we get our teams, our operational teams get expected to do a lot. We have to be kind of multidisciplinary players, and I think a lot about the dichotomy of leadership. I've got to give Jocko Willink credit for that terminology, right? But it's really this idea that you're willing to do the small things, the little things that are detail oriented. Maybe it's texting an agent or just looking after your financials or just taking out the trash. It doesn't matter. But at the same time, you're willing to do the big things, the strategy work, the creative thinking, and it's really an entrepreneurial mindset, I think, Peter, that translates well to agents' businesses, right? So it's this idea where you've got, I think about this all the time. You've got the micro detail oriented stuff that is, maybe menial and in the big exciting strategy work. And you really have to spend time, and in my estimation, on both riverbanks,
Hmm.
and they're both good places to be. They're essential places where you need to spend time, right? But if you spend too much time on either one of those, you're not moving downstream, I think, as fast as you probably could. And so I think, it's, I think a good office comes with an entrepreneurial mindset like
Well, I
that,
love that.
and I think there's a hospitality element to it too, right? I mean, it's not handing people a beer and a sandwich when they walk in, but you have to, having people feel welcome, that they're a part of it, that we do have a good culture, and that they identify with that. And I hope we get to talk about that. I mean, screening people,
Hmm.
recruiting to culture, um, and just got to offer something other than a mechanism for them to make money.
Hmm.
Workplace satisfaction is sort of the number one thing people bring up in, when they think about well-being, and it's important.
Well, when I think of your office, you know, what makes what helps make it great, because there's lots of factors that I think make your office great. You being one of the main reasons, the agents being the other main reason. You have great agents there,
We do.
but there's a collegial kind of collaborative environment that you've created within that office. I mean, there's a real care that I sense people feel about you, helping you continue to develop that office and make it a great office. They come to you, they say, Concho, this is working well. This one we got to get, they're there. They're
Mm-hmm.
part of your team as much as you're part of their team. And how did you, I mean, how would a manager create that within an office, that close family environment that you've developed?
Well, I'd love to take credit for it all, Peter, but I can't. I mean, I think it starts with, believe it or not, I think it comes from a learning mindset, and you know, it's one of the things that I really adore about Element is that there's this magical learning mindset here, and people are learning, and it makes you at some point want to teach and want to share and want to include people. And so I think some of that existed just from the company level before I got here, but that's something that's always been important to me, and it's something that attracted me to Element. So, and I guess to go a level deeper there, when you put yourself in the position of thinking that the world is a great place, there's something good to learn from everybody. It makes you more positive. It just comes off more positive, right? So when you're in conversations, you're you're more in the moment. You're appreciating it. You don't think you're better or worse than anybody else. You're learning, right? And
It's like a 300, we call it 360-degree learning, where we're all learning from each other. Like, what can we learn from the person at the front desk? What can we learn from our new agent, our experienced agent? What can we learn from our manager? What can we learn from the executives? Like, we all have these coaching moments throughout the day with everybody.
yeah, I think I think it may be stronger at Element than even Element realizes. I think it's the Element superpower, and I love it. And I think that when we foster that, when agents get into a learning mindset in a position, only then, when they're thinking more deeply too, that can they enable strategy. And when they think strategically, they can get to simplicity. And when they get to that point, they're gonna really take off.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. So since I think the makings of a great office has a lot to do with office culture, let's just skip ahead and talk about office culture for a second here. How do you
Yeah.
build culture in an office? I mean, it's talked about. I mean, and honestly, I think it's probably the main reason agents join an office is for the culture. Way more than the compensation. I know there are some agents that are just totally focused on compensation, but they may not be the agents even wanting your culture. If they're that focused on me, it's difficult to ever make them happy. So how do you like look at office culture, and what are some of the things you do to develop it?
I think it starts with realizing that culture is everything. It all really starts there. And number one, you can't be afraid to talk about it. Some people think it's a sign that you hang in the break room, or it's something for bigger companies or different industries. It's not. It's for every company, and it begins with talking about it. I talk about it in recruiting meetings, Peter. I'll be talking about this afternoon, and um, so you have to have this idea of what it is, and you just put it out there and start talking about it in front of recruits, in front of staff that you're going to hire, and people will self-select, right? They'll either come to that or they won't. And if they're here, they may go somewhere else, and you end up ultimately, when you work your way through that, with a team that is more connected with, they're doing things on a daily basis that you really don't have to tell them to do, because you're kind of operating from the same playbook.
Sort of the ethos, that basic underlying, I don't know, tenets of values. Like, what values do you put an emphasis on?
Well, I've already said learning. It's, to me, that's one of my favorite cultural points,
Yeah,
right?
me too.
Having a learning culture. And then I think that being very genuine is, I would say, next on the list. So there's no one's pretending. Everyone is being straightforward, and it's, you are who you are. And I think a lot about that. It's the same way you would treat your client base too. It's, you're committed to it. You're genuine. We're not here just to make money. Um, we're very open people, and we mean what we say. And then beyond that, there's a few more things I can say. I think being driven is also I would put number 3 on the list, right? And that's not, you know, a boiler room culture or anything like that, but we're here to do things today. We want success today. We want to help each other today. Um, and I could talk about this forever. I think learning, genuine, driven is a great place to start for me.
So you mentioned, everyone has to buy into the culture. And so the agents you keep and the agents you bring in are going to help determine the success of that culture. When you're looking to hire a new agent, and I know you have lots of agents coming to you all the time that want to join, what are the qualities you're looking for before you'll actually let them in the door?
It starts with, when you get into these meetings, I think it starts with an engagement of listening and learning. When I'm sitting across the table, you can tell who's engaged. People are there that really want to know what Element's all about. When you start talking about what's unique about Element, all the wonderful things like DEDM and Knight Frank, and if they're engaged in that, that they're wanting to learn something. And I think the faster someone brings up splits, the less I like them in general.
Right.
I
mean, we have a philosophy that if we like each other, the economics are easy.
Exactly. So, and I will talk about culture, just like we talked about, and roll through those items and kind of probe that. And then, I think that I may test them a little bit on humor too, which may not be really traditional, but we want to we want to make fun of ourselves and have a good time along the way too.
How do you do that? I want to do that from now on. I love that idea.
No, I mean, if you're in any of our sales meetings or you're in this office, you're going to laugh at some point.
I love that.
And why not? Life's too short not to do that.
Yeah.
And look, some people are more comfortable than others having a good time and laughing. And it doesn't mean we're not focused or not getting things done, but I think it may signal people that are more comfortable with themselves, and that can make fun of themselves. I think, when humor shows through it helps me like somebody.
That's great. I absolutely agree with that. There's so much talk about growth in our industry and, companies, growth trajectories, office growth trajectories. What is your philosophy on growth for your office?
Yeah. We are in such an amazing marketplace here, Peter. A lot of people don't know this, but it's, this market area is something like 9,300 square miles, right? So think of it as roughly the size of Connecticut. And, to me, there's really interesting activity going on everywhere. It's part of what makes it exciting, right? So not only do we have these migration patterns where people are coming here and big companies are coming here, but there's growth in all corners. We can drive an hour in each direction from where I'm sitting right now and enter $1 million plus residential gated community. And to me, that's amazing. And so the way that translates into a growth philosophy is I'm trying to cover a massive area and treat all the major submarkets as important. I want to. We can't be experts in every corner, right? I mean, we try, but I think there's markets where there's more activity and they're more well known, and those will always be important to us and part of our operation. But I'm really liking the idea of Element having horsepower and expertise in all of these major submarkets in this area. And that may just be like, okay, Concho, that's not so unique, but I don't think any brokerage that is not a franchise, Peter, has really done that here yet.
Mm.
And I think that's a great opportunity
How do
ahead
you see
for
it
us.
happening?
We just have to keep doing what we're doing. I mean, we have to. It's a lot of time in the car.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to be in recruiting meetings late and to travel a long distance to do business, to do farm and ranch, to look at condo tower opportunities. It takes a lot of mental commitment because there are so many areas and so many potential people that we can work with. We just have to, plant our seed and get a foothold in each of these areas, and then keep supporting each other from there. It may not be obvious why bringing a $50 million team on in Frisco can help you in Highland Park, but it really does.
Yeah.
It's
so interesting because your philosophy aligns so much with the Element philosophy, which is so different, like you said, than the franchises out there. Being independently owned, we control completely every market we go into, every market we choose to go into, and all those things. And as a philosophy, the company is looking at luxury markets and no tax markets as our target markets. And on top of that, I think we're very, very, very careful and selective in our growth, much more so than some of these companies that are either hiring any agent that can, fog a mirror, or open in any city where somebody wants to join them, or, just going for massive all things to all people. I don't see that as Douglas Elliman. It isn't Douglas Elliman, and it's not the Dallas office.
No, scale for scale's sake doesn't connect you culturally, with your team. It's a really a big leap to think if you grow with a massive acquisition time after time, it's hard to hold together, right? And I think in our business, in particular, that where your assets go up and down the elevator, if you will.
Yeah. Or as I say, assets have feet.
Same. I think it goes without saying that I think it's more important than ever. I don't want to say culture too many times, but that's hard to do in big acquisitions.
Yeah.
Right. And so Element has shown that it's consistent, and it's going to be analytical and go slow and be here for the long term. Right.
That's right. Long-term play. Exactly.
That's how I like to think of it. And, companies and agents want to focus on the near term sometimes, but I think it's really important to look a few years into the future.
I agree completely. What are your priorities as a manager, and how do you organize them day to day?
Yeah, I think the overriding principle is just balance. The core of what we have to do, right? We have to get ourselves out into the marketplace and get noticed and recruit people and attract them to who we are as a company. We have to touch the agents that we have. And so you have to carve out some time to do that, whether it's big or small, make that happen and stay connected. I can't say that enough. Beyond that, I would say, think about, there's the basic stuff that we have to do, Peter, to look at our business quantitatively, and that's not really unique, but that's a part of operational discipline. You just have to, and I think that's a lesson for agents too, right? You have to pay attention to that. And then really think about inventive ways to grow and operate, right? Like, how are we, how can we get in front of clients and how can I help agents too with their clients and create openings for agent and team growth.
Hmm.
I like to do it. Yesterday, I was standing on a piece of land real early in the morning looking at um, a potential condo development, and I'm going to tee it up for agents. And that's, there's a lot there. And so I
That's
try
great.
to not, again, spend too much time on any one riverbank.
Hmm.
Think big and do the small stuff too to try to help our team.
Okay, I think that's great, and that's a perfect lead-in. Concho, you have secret power, and I'm going to say that as a manager, I think your previous experiences are far different and far more elevated than the typical manager who just came from sales.
Mm-hmm.
And so this offers you a unique ability to coach agents, um, to provide advice to agents that doesn't exist with other managers. So let me ask you this. If you were to say your secret power is, what would you say it is?
I think I would describe it, Peter, as maybe a practicality of understanding what it takes to run a business, right? And how I can relate that um, to agents and teams to help them in ways that maybe a typical brokerage can't. Um, because there's a lot of parallels, and if you're thinking about um, how to grow, say, a small business or a large one, and how to grow your real estate business, you first have to create context. You have to understand your marketplace, right? You have to be committed to understanding your competitors and then how you're going to compete against them. And then because you can't compete with every competitor on every dimension, right? and and so at that point, you've got to make a decision about how you want to compete, and then create your tactics around that. So it's really, that's sort of basic strategic planning framework. And I think what I can do is I like bringing that thought process to people, and then along the way, um, all the other lessons from business come in, right? As your team grows, your business grows, then you have these managerial opportunities like you see everywhere else. You're
Yeah.
thinking about how you're financially approaching the situation,
Yeah.
right? Human resource, how you're going to manage people. And I think that sort of strategic planning framework and layering on experience from multiple industries is really fun for me,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of lessons like that.
Yeah. I
Um,
remember when I met you, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's really smart. I was like, wow, and I mean, and when I say that, not only intelligence, because you're super intelligent, but you're thoughtful, you're strategic, you're prepared. And those are, I think, things that agents could learn from that. And you can also talk financials, you can talk scaling, you can talk systems with them, and you can talk, like you said, context, or maybe, where and how they want to build their business might be how I explain that, right? And so I know you're big on business planning with your agents, and I know you're getting ready to launch business planning because, if we're going to get ready for 2024, we better get started right now, because a business plan shouldn't be like a 2-day thing. It should really have some thought and planning into it, right? So talk to us a little bit about your plans for your agents and how you're going to, train them in some business planning.
Yeah, it's some of the things that I just mentioned. It's we're going to spend a lot of time. Um, I think you have to start by creating context, Peter, and making sure they understand the market or maybe the sub markets that they're in, understanding what they're up against. Who are they competing with, um, and how do you want to compete within that, right? Then you start thinking about help them think through what tools and materials they have to fill that. And so that goes to the a lot of in this is common territory, right? Sphere development and building and sphere marketing, and perhaps bringing that down to a quantitative level, right? That's not so unique, I think, in real estate business planning. And then, really, so we'll offer some broad strategic thinking, things like that, and put materials and research in front of them, and then bring it down. I want to be able to bring it down to the one-on-one level and offer that and try to play off of each agent and team's uniqueness.
I love that.
So we've got a lot. It's going to be a lot, but I can't imagine a better place to be and spend Q4 doing that, getting ready for next year.
Boy, your agent's lucky to have you. If you were to give advice to a new manager entering the business, what would that advice look like?
I would say, I think that a big helping of patience. Number one, it's going to take some time, right, to build trust. And I think that you've got to approach it with a calm confidence and a commitment to doing it every day and staying focused on the right things. Essentially, I think I said this earlier, you're doing the things that you're really expecting your agents to do, right? You're showing operational discipline. You're doing it every day. You're not losing focus, and so you're not focused too much. It's okay to look outward, right, and see what your competitors are doing or what this company's doing, what this agent's doing. But I think you have to truncate that at some point and be open to exploring yourself and what role what you're bringing to the table is playing in your success. So just being open to what you're seeing and learning around you. And I think it takes time. I mean, I would say, in a good size shop like this, it's to get settled into a culture and to start really clicking and growing. I would say it's a year plus process to really be peaking.
Boy, do I remember my first year. You're so right on the money. It was wow. It was like my advice for new managers would be buckle up.
Yeah, I meditate a lot, so I try to remain calm.
Yeah.
Stay mindful.
Well, Concho, this brings us to the end of the Core Truth today. But thank you so much for being my guest. I'm so happy to be working with you. You're such a great guy.
Same.
Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Well, that's it, everybody. That's a wrap. This is another Core Truth. Thank you, and we'll be back next Thursday with another. See you then.
Thank you, Peter.